Hey friends, I'm Megan, so glad you're here. We've got a great episode today. Let's get started.
Under the delicate fabric of her daily routine, Anna had grown accustomed to a quiet unease she could never quite define. It crept into her life not like a sudden storm, but as a slow, persistent drizzle, soaking into everything without her even noticing. At first, it was only a vague sense that things were shifting in her relationship with Alexei. A feeling that hovered somewhere between her heart and her stomach. It was easy to ignore, to brush off as the natural ebb and flow of two people who had weathered 5 years together. After all, wasn't it normal for the early butterflies to settle into something more grounded? More steady? She wanted to believe so. To trust in the foundation they had built. To dismiss her worries as nothing more than imagination fueled by late-night stories or fleeting moments of insecurity. Yet, as weeks passed, Anna noticed subtle changes that she could not unsee. Alexei's laughter was less frequent. His presence at home felt somehow thinner. Like he was a little less there even when sitting right across from her. She would watch him absorbed in his phone at the kitchen table. Head bowed and shoulders hunched, as if shielding secrets from the world. She told herself it was work, or maybe a new game, or just one of those phases people go through. Still, she remembered the time not long ago when every evening together was marked by shared meals and the comfort of a hand reaching for hers across the couch. Those moments were becoming rare. And she wondered if she was imagining the distance or if it was simply a fact she was too afraid to face. Their friends, too, seemed to fade from the picture. None more so than Marina. Marina, who had once been an inseparable part of their trio, suddenly became a ghost in their group chats. Her invitations growing less frequent. Her responses clipped and apologetic. Anna tried to recall the last time the three of them had sat around the old wooden table in Marina's kitchen, trading stories and laughter, and realized with a start that months had slipped by since then. When she reached out, Marina's answers were always the same. Too busy. Working late. Maybe next week. Anna forced herself to believe it was just life. Just the way friendships shift as everyone grows older and more tangled in their own lives. But sometimes, she caught herself wondering why she could not shake the feeling that something precious was slipping through her fingers. In the quiet moments, when the house was empty except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the rain tapping at the window, Anna's mind wandered to that brief, tumultuous chapter that had happened just 6 months before. She had called it a break, a pause, needing space to sort through the chaos that had swelled between her and Alexei after a series of petty arguments and missed connections. She remembered the conversations with herself as much as with him. Endless circles about whether it was better to fight for what they had or to step away before it soured further. The decision to take a break had felt, in the moment, like a relief and a heartbreak at once. She told herself it would give them both room to breathe, to remember why they chose each other in the first place. The memories of that month-long break hovered like ghosts. She remembered how quiet the apartment felt, how she caught herself setting the table for two out of habit, how she thought of texting him only to stop herself at the last second. There were nights she lay awake replaying their last argument, searching for the thread that had unraveled everything, and mornings when she tried to fill the space with distractions. Extra hours at work, new books, long walks through the city. She saw Marina a little more often in that period, grateful for her friend's patient ear and warm hugs. Looking back, Anna wondered if she had missed some signs even then. Some warning in the way Marina's eyes lingered on her or the strange hesitations in her voice. But at the time, she could only think of her own loneliness. Her hope that distance would heal what had been wounded. When Alexei returned, as if nothing had changed, Anna let herself believe that maybe the space had worked. They eased back into old routines. though something about them felt rehearsed. Like actors reading lines they'd memorized but no longer felt. She reassured herself that it was only a phase, that every couple went through rough patches. Yet the sensation of something unfinished, unsaid, persisted. She grew adept at silencing the nagging doubts, throwing herself into work, friends, anything that kept her busy. But each time she let herself pause, the unease returned, sharper than before. Sometimes she found herself sifting through old photos on her phone. Snapshots of laughter, travel, holidays spent in each other's arms. She would stare at the images, searching for the moment when the easy smiles became forced, when the love that once sparkled in their eyes began to fade. She wondered if anyone else could see the shift or if it was visible only to her, the one who had lived inside the story. There were nights she woke from restless dreams, heart racing, convinced something was wrong but unable to name it. She began to dread the weekends, when Alexei would announce plans without her or Marina would cancel at the last minute. It was easier to pretend everything was fine, to show up at work with a smile and chat with colleagues about weekend plans, to scroll through social media and click like on photos that looked like someone else's life. Anna reminded herself that she was lucky. She had a partner, a good job, a cozy home. She had survived that month alone and come back stronger, hadn't she? But beneath the veneer of gratitude was an undercurrent of fear. She feared that what she and Alexei shared was slipping away. That Marina's absence was not simply busyness but something darker. That her instincts were not lying after all. As the days shortened and the city slid quietly from autumn into winter, Anna felt the weight of her doubts more keenly. She found herself waiting for a sign. Any sign that would confirm her suspicions or banish them forever. She told herself that love required trust, that she owed it to both of them to believe in what they had built. But each morning she woke with a heaviness in her chest, a silent question she could not voice. What if the life she had so carefully constructed was already fractured? The cracks widening just beneath the surface, waiting for the slightest tremor to bring it all tumbling down? Anna's mornings settled into a careful rhythm, each day marked by small rituals she hoped would anchor her in the familiar. She brewed coffee before sunrise, watching the world outside her kitchen window fade from indigo to pale gold, savoring the stillness before the city awakened. She tried to cling to these quiet moments, but even as she sipped her coffee, a sense of unease gnawed at her. She noticed Alexei leaving earlier for work, returning later than usual, his explanations always plausible but tinged with an edge she could not name. Sometimes, she would hear his laughter in another room, muffled and brief, and by the time she joined him, his phone would be face down, the smile gone from his face. These small details formed a pattern she could not ignore, each piece slotting uneasily into place, hinting at a truth she did not want to face. Anna's attempts to reconnect with Marina became more strained with each passing week. Where once her messages were met with instant replies and emojis, now there were long pauses, sometimes hours, sometimes entire days. When they finally met for coffee, Marina's eyes darted to her phone with a frequency that made Anna feel like a ghost in the room. She tried to brush it off, telling herself that work must be demanding, that everyone had periods of distraction. But she could not silence the voice that wondered if the distance between them was more than mere circumstance. She thought about their long friendship, the years of shared secrets, whispered plans and late-night confessions, and wondered when they had last laughed the way they used to. Sometimes she caught a flicker of guilt or uncertainty in Marina's expression, as if she was about to confess something but then swallowed the words and changed the subject. Anna would leave these meetings with a heaviness that lingered, replaying every gesture and pause, searching for hidden meaning. The apartment, once their sanctuary, began to feel like a stage set, Anna moved through the rooms with the careful precision of someone determined not to disturb a delicate balance. She found herself studying Alexei's habits. The way he would check his phone and quickly slip it into his pocket if she entered the room. The nervous way he glanced at her over dinner, as if waiting for a question she refused to ask. She convinced herself that she was being paranoid, that her mind was inventing problems where none existed. But the evidence piled up in small, relentless increments. One evening, as she was folding laundry, she noticed a faint trace of perfume on one of Alexei's shirts. A scent that was not hers. Familiar in a way that made her heart stutter. She tried to recall the last time she and Marina had hugged. The last time their lives had overlapped naturally. But the memories felt distant and unreachable, as if they belonged to someone else. Her thoughts drifted back to the break they had taken months ago. That brief interlude when everything had felt uncertain and raw. Anna relived the decision, the endless conversations about what they needed, the tearful silences and promises that space would help them heal. She remembered the loneliness that seeped into her bones during that month. The way she tried to distract herself with work and friends, all the while feeling untethered. She remembered turning to Marina during that period, grateful for her unwavering support, the long walks and heart-to-heart talks that seemed to keep her afloat. But now, with the benefit of hindsight, Anna wondered if there had been signs even then. If there had been a subtle shift she had been too wounded to notice. She questioned whether the comfort she found in Marina's friendship had ever truly belonged to her. Or if it had been borrowed, temporary, destined to slip away as soon as she began to trust it. As winter deepened and the days grew shorter, Anna felt her world narrowing. She became hyper-aware of every interaction, every silence, every missed call. She watched Alexei and Marina for clues, piecing together half-remembered conversations and the strange overlaps in their schedules. Sometimes, she found herself walking through the city for hours, trying to outrun her own thoughts, searching for some sign that everything would be okay. She noticed how her own behavior was changing, how she hesitated before asking simple questions, how she filtered her words so as not to sound accusatory, how she tiptoed around both Alexei and Marina, afraid that any sudden movement might shatter the fragile peace that remained. She remembered the ease with which she had once shared her life, the comfort of knowing she could trust the people closest to her. Now, she felt as though she was living in a house of mirrors, every reflection distorted by suspicion and doubt. She scrutinized Alexei's texts for hidden meanings, replayed his offhand remarks, wondered if he was testing her patience or simply lost in his own world. The easy intimacy they once shared had been replaced by a polite formality, as if they were both guests in someone else's home. Anna found herself longing for the days when everything had been simple, when love felt like a given rather than a question that needed constant answering. Even her dreams betrayed her, filling her nights with fractured images of betrayal and loss. She would wake in the dark, heart pounding, certain that something terrible had happened, only to find herself alone in bed, the room silent but for the distant hum of traffic. She began to dread sleep, afraid of what her mind might reveal, and filled the empty hours with endless scrolling through social media, searching for proof that other people's lives were as complicated as her own. Sometimes, she would see a photo of Alexei and Marina together, posted months earlier, and wonder if she had missed something obvious, some sign that had been there all along. Anna's growing isolation made her acutely sensitive to the smallest changes in her relationships. She noticed how Marina's messages had become less personal, more superficial, as if she was avoiding any topic that might lead to difficult truths. She noticed how Alexei seemed relieved when she made plans without him, how he seized every opportunity to be elsewhere, to fill his days with errands and commitments that kept him away from home. She tried to convince herself that these changes were temporary, that things would return to normal if only she waited long enough. But the weight of uncertainty pressed down on her, making it difficult to breathe. One afternoon, as she sorted through the mail, Anna found an old postcard from Marina tucked between bills and advertisements. It was from a trip they had taken together years earlier. Before Alexei. Before everything had become complicated. The sight of Marina's handwriting, cheerful and unguarded, made Anna ache with nostalgia for a time when life felt safe and predictable. She wondered if it was possible to return to that innocence, or if the past was truly beyond reach. She tucked the postcard into her desk drawer, unable to bring herself to throw it away. Anna's world became a landscape of unanswered questions and half-formed suspicions. She spent hours replaying conversations in her head, searching for clues, hoping to find reassurance in the details she had missed. But the more she searched, the more she found herself lost in a maze of doubt and longing. She wondered if she was losing her mind, or if her instincts were trying to protect her from a truth she was not ready to face. Each day felt like a test of endurance, a challenge to maintain her composure in the face of growing uncertainty. She clung to the routines that had once brought her comfort, but even these were tinged with sadness now. She prepared Alexei's favorite meals, hoping to elicit a smile or a word of gratitude, but his responses were distracted and distant. She sent Marina thoughtful messages, invitations to lunch or coffee, but the replies were always the same. Another time, another day. Anna told herself that she was being patient, that relationships required forgiveness and understanding, but her heart ached for a sign that she was not alone in her struggle. As the first snow of winter blanketed the city, Anna stood at the window and watched the world outside transform. The familiar streets were softened and silenced, the ordinary rendered magical by the hush of falling snow. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope that things might change, that the cold would bring clarity and renewal. But even as she stood there, Anna knew that some things, once broken, could not be made whole again. The silence between her and Alexei grew louder with each passing day, and the distance between her and Marina felt insurmountable. She wondered how long she could continue pretending, how much longer she could endure the uncertainty that defined her days. Anna realized that she was waiting for something, a revelation, a confession, a moment of truth that would either shatter her world or set her free. She did not know what form it would take, or whether she was ready to face it when it came. But as she watched the snowfall and the city slow to a hush, Anna understood that change was inevitable. Whatever secrets lay hidden in the spaces between her and the people she loved, they would come to light in time. Until then, she would keep searching for answers, holding on to hope even as it slipped through her fingers, and preparing herself for the moment when everything she feared might finally become real. Anna had always believed that the worst moments in life arrived with a warning, that a certain heaviness or subtle shift in the air would offer her time to brace herself for what was coming. But the moment her world finally broke apart arrived without prelude, disguised as an ordinary afternoon, and left her scrambling for breath. She had taken the day off work to prepare for her birthday, a day that used to fill her with anticipation and, for the first time in years, felt instead like a test of endurance. The apartment was filled with the quiet energy of preparation. A cake half frosted in the kitchen, decorations in neat piles on the table, a bouquet of lilies placed carefully by the window. Anna moved through the space, her mind occupied by checklists and recipes, trying to banish the gnawing unease that had become a constant companion. She was determined to make the day special, to prove to herself and to Alexei that they could still find happiness together. Even as winter pressed in on all sides, the city outside was silent beneath a heavy blanket of snow, the usual bustle muted. As if the world itself was holding its breath, Anna's phone chimed with birthday wishes from colleagues and distant friends. Each message a small thread anchoring her to a life that, for all its fractures, still seemed worth mending. She checked her watch and saw that Alexei was late. He had promised to be home by midday, to help with the preparations, and his absence pressed against her resolve. She tried to call him, but the call went unanswered, the line cutting to voicemail after just a few rings. Anna told herself not to worry, that he was probably caught in traffic or had stopped to pick up something special, that his lateness was an oversight and nothing more. But as the minutes ticked by, her certainty drained away, replaced by a sense of foreboding that made her hands tremble as she worked. When Anna finally decided to take out the trash, a small, practical task that would clear her mind, she stepped out into the hallway and noticed that Alexei's shoes were already by the door. Confused, she returned to the apartment, calling his name out of habit, but the rooms remained silent. She placed the trash bag by the door and moved quietly through the flat, her footsteps muffled on the rug. The kitchen was empty, the living room tidied and still. It was only as she approached the guest room, a space rarely used except for storage and occasional visitors, that Anna heard the faintest sound, a murmur quickly stifled, followed by the unmistakable creak of the old wooden bed. For a moment, Anna stood frozen in the hallway, her heart hammering so loudly she feared it might drown out every other sound. Logic warred with panic. She told herself there must be a reasonable explanation, that perhaps Alexei was on a call, that perhaps Marina had arrived early and they were discussing something private, something meant to be a surprise. But the deeper truth pulsed just beneath her skin, undeniable and cold. Her hand shook as she reached for the door, pushing it open with a force that startled even herself. Inside, the scene unfolded in agonizing detail, each second stretching out into eternity. Alexei was there, his back turned toward her, and beside him, unmistakable in her familiar silhouette, was Marina. They both froze, as if caught in a beam of light, their faces stripped of pretense. All warmth and ease vanished in an instant. Anna felt as if she had been dropped into someone else's nightmare, her mind unable to process what her eyes saw. The room spun around her, the air thick and suffocating. For a moment, none of them moved. The silence between them was absolute, broken only by the frantic beat of Anna's own heart. Anna's thoughts tumbled in on themselves, fragmented and wild. She remembered every awkward glance, every delayed message, every moment of doubt that had haunted her in recent weeks. It was all here, laid bare before her, undeniable and irreversible. She felt a deep, bone-deep ache begin to spread through her body, a pain so profound that it rendered her both weightless and unbearably heavy at once. She saw the fear in Alexei's eyes, the shame etched across Marina's face, and felt a white-hot surge of betrayal that left her gasping. She turned away, stumbling down the hallway, desperate for air, for distance, for the illusion that she could outrun what she had seen. In the kitchen, she gripped the edge of the countertop, willing herself to breathe, to think, to survive the next few minutes. The sounds of hurried footsteps followed her, voices raised and pleading. But Anna heard nothing but the rushing of blood in her ears. She closed her eyes, replaying the scene again and again, searching for some detail she had missed, some clue that would make sense of the chaos. Memories crashed over her in waves. She remembered the break, that fragile ceasefire when she and Alexei had agreed to step back, to give each other space to heal. She remembered confiding in Marina, sharing her doubts and fears, never once imagining that the person she trusted most could be the very source of her pain. Every conversation replayed in her mind, now sharpened by the knowledge of what had been hidden beneath the surface. Anna wondered how she could have been so blind, How she could have mistaken secrecy for care, absence for busyness, and silence for peace. Anna's world, once solid and dependable, now felt treacherous and alien. The apartment she had filled with so much love and hope was now transformed into a gallery of broken promises, every familiar object stained by the knowledge of betrayal. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, her body numb and unfeeling, her mind cycling through anger, sorrow, disbelief, and finally a terrible, shattering clarity. She thought of all the times she had dismissed her own instincts, convinced herself she was being unreasonable, told herself that trust meant forgiveness, that love meant endurance. Now she saw those efforts for what they were, a desperate attempt to protect herself from a truth she could not bear to face. In the hours that followed, Anna drifted between moments of stunned stillness and sudden, overwhelming emotion. She remembered the messages she had ignored, the signs she had downplayed, the intuition she had silenced for the sake of harmony. She realized that the break, rather than healing them, had merely provided the cover for a deeper wound to form, a wound that had now burst open in the harsh light of day. The hurt was not just for herself, but for the friendship she had cherished, for the trust she had placed in both Alexei and Marina, for the version of her life that no longer existed. Anna did not know how long she sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cake and the scattered decorations. The world outside her window continued on in its silent, indifferent way, snow falling steadily, burying the city in white. She was aware, in some distant part of her mind, that she should call someone, tell someone, do something to mark the enormity of what had happened. But she could not move. She could only sit and remember, letting the pain settle around her like the snow, cold and relentless. When night finally came, Anna found herself wandering the apartment, collecting pieces of her old life and setting them aside as if clearing the wreckage after a storm. She packed away photos, stashed gifts in drawers, erased reminders from her calendar. She did these things slowly, methodically, not out of anger but from a need to reclaim some sense of control. She understood, perhaps for the first time, that the loss was not sudden, that it had been coming for months, maybe years, a gradual unraveling she had been powerless to stop. The betrayal had simply made visible what had long been true, that love, no matter how fiercely clung to, could not survive in the absence of trust. Anna's phone buzzed with messages, apologies, explanations, justifications that blurred together into meaningless noise. She ignored them all, unwilling to let anyone else's words intrude upon her grief. In the quiet, she remembered who she had been before all this. The girl who believed in happy endings, in second chances, in the power of forgiveness. She mourned her own innocence as much as she mourned the loss of her relationship and her friendship. The pain was raw and overwhelming, but it was hers, and she held onto it as proof that she was still alive, still capable of feeling. That night, as she lay alone in the darkness, Anna let herself cry for everything she had lost, for the love that had failed her, for the friend who had betrayed her, for the life she could never get back. The tears came in great, silent waves, carrying away the last remnants of denial and leaving behind only the truth. She understood now that some wounds could not be healed by time or apologies, that some betrayals cut too deep to forgive. As dawn crept into the sky and the city began to stir, Anna made a silent vow to herself. She would survive this. She would find a way to rebuild, even if it meant starting from nothing. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that survival was possible, that in the ruins of her old life, something new might one day grow. The days following Anna's discovery passed in a haze, time blurring around her until every hour felt like an echo of the last she moved through her apartment, as if submerged underwater, her senses dulled by shock and the ache of betrayal. The world outside seemed distant. The usual sounds of the city softened, as though nothing could penetrate the thick silence that now filled her life. The apartment, once a sanctuary, became a museum of memories she could not escape. Each object a silent witness to everything that had been lost. She tried to keep herself busy. To clean, to organize, to erase the evidence of that day. But nothing could banish the images from her mind. The scene replayed itself relentlessly. The stunned faces, the sudden hush, the sharp realization that what she had feared all along had been real. Anna found herself revisiting every detail of the past year, scrutinizing each interaction for clues she might have missed. She thought about the months leading up to the break, the slow accumulation of disagreements and misunderstandings, the mounting frustration that neither she nor Alexei could voice without sparking a fight. She remembered how tired she had felt, how she had longed for peace, and how desperate she had been for a solution that would not involve the pain of separation. The idea of a break had seemed, at the time, like an act of mercy, a chance to find perspective, to rebuild trust. She wondered now if she had been naive, if she had chosen to believe in hope simply because the alternative was too painful to consider. In the aftermath of what had happened, Anna was haunted by questions she could not answer. She asked herself if she was to blame, if her decision to step away had been the opening Alexei and Marina needed, if she had, in some way, handed them permission to cross a line she thought was sacred. She replayed the conversations she had with both of them during that month apart, searching for hints of longing or guilt, for signs that she was no longer at the center of either of their worlds. The realization that trust could be so easily broken left her feeling exposed and foolish, as though she had been living in a story that everyone else understood except for her. The pain of betrayal was compounded by the loneliness that followed. Anna had always prided herself on her independence, but in those first days, solitude felt like a punishment. She tried to reach out to friends and family, hoping for comfort or advice, but their responses were awkward, uncertain, unable to offer the certainty she craved. Some were quick to judge, suggesting that a break was always a mistake, that no good ever came from giving a partner space. Others offered only hollow platitudes about forgiveness and moving on. Anna realized that no one else could truly understand what she was experiencing, that the grief was hers alone to bear. Messages from Alexei and Marina arrived in a steady stream, each one more insistent than the last. Alexei pleaded for understanding, explaining that what had happened was not an affair but a mistake, an unfortunate coincidence born out of loneliness and confusion. He reminded her that they had not been together at the time, that the rules had been unclear, that he had never meant to hurt her. Marina's words were softer, full of remorse and tangled explanations about boundaries and regrets, about how friendship had blurred into something neither of them had intended. Both insisted that Anna was the most important person in their lives, that nothing could change how much they cared for her. But their words fell flat, unable to reach her through the wall of pain that separated them now. Anna's nights became battlegrounds, her mind replaying every moment of her relationship with Alexei, every shared secret with Marina. She remembered the way Alexei had once looked at her, the laughter they had shared, the future they had planned together in late-night whispers. She remembered the comfort she had found in Marina's friendship, the sense that no matter what happened, she would always have someone in her corner. Those memories, once sources of strength, now felt poisoned, tainted by the knowledge that trust could be broken so quickly, that the bonds she relied on could be undone in a single moment. She tried to find answers in her own actions, to understand what she could have done differently. Was it her fault for needing space, for insisting on a break when things became too difficult? Had she driven Alexei and Marina together by refusing to see them, by seeking comfort in solitude? The questions tormented her, circling in her mind without resolution. She realized that pain, once inflicted, was indifferent to blame. It simply existed, demanding to be felt and processed before it could fade. In search of clarity, Anna began writing letters she never intended to send. She wrote to Alexei, pouring out her anger and confusion, asking him why honesty had felt impossible, why he had chosen to keep secrets rather than confront the truth. She wrote to Marina, confessing the depth of her hurt, the sense of abandonment that had taken root in her heart. She wrote to herself, trying to forgive her own mistakes, to accept that no amount of hindsight could change what had happened. The act of writing brought a strange comfort, allowing her to release the thoughts that threatened to overwhelm her. As the days stretched on, Anna found herself retreating from the world, canceling plans and avoiding places where she might run into familiar faces. She felt exposed, as if everyone around her could see the fractures in her life, as if her pain was written across her skin. She grew tired of well-meaning advice and empty reassurances, tired of pretending that she was healing when she felt stuck in place. She spent long hours walking the city streets, letting the cold air numb her, hoping that movement would bring some measure of peace. Sometimes, she would see couples laughing together or friends huddled over coffee, and the sight would fill her with both longing and resentment. She wanted to believe that happiness was still possible, that trust could be rebuilt, but doubt lingered in every corner of her mind. She wondered if she would ever again be able to give herself fully to another person, if she would ever risk vulnerability after being hurt so deeply. Gradually, Anna began to accept that healing would not come quickly, that she could not force herself to move on before she was ready. She realized that forgiveness, if it ever came, would not be for Alexei or Marina, but for herself, for the version of her who had believed in love and friendship, who had tried to hold her world together despite all odds. She began to see that her pain, while overwhelming, was also a testament to her capacity to love, to hope, to trust even in the depths of her grief. She recognized a glimmer of strength, a sense that she had survived something she once thought would destroy her. Anna started to set small goals for herself, to get out of bed each morning, to eat breakfast, to walk in the park even when she wanted only to hide. She allowed herself to feel her sadness without judgment, to acknowledge her anger without letting it consume her. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to reclaim pieces of herself that she had lost in the wake of betrayal. She remembered the dreams and passions that had nothing to do with Alexei or Marina, the parts of her identity that were wholly her own. With time, the pain began to soften, its edges blurring as new experiences and moments of joy crept back into her life. Anna discovered that she could laugh again, even if only for a moment, that she could find beauty in the world despite everything that had happened. She allowed herself to imagine a future beyond heartbreak, a life shaped not by loss but by resilience. The scars would remain, she knew, but they would no longer define her. In the stillness of her apartment, Anna reflected on the lessons she had learned. She understood now that love required honesty, that friendship demanded boundaries, that self-forgiveness was the foundation of healing. She recognized that her worth was not determined by the choices of others, that she could choose to trust herself even when trust in others had been broken. The journey ahead would not be easy, but for the first time, Anna felt hope flicker within her, a small, stubborn flame that promised light in the darkness, a reminder that even after the deepest wounds, new life was possible. Anna's decision to walk away from both Alexei and Marina unfolded not in a single dramatic moment, but as a gradual, quietly defiant act of self-preservation. The days and weeks that followed her revelation became a test of resolve, a series of choices that, while small in isolation, together formed a path out of the ruins of her former life. She began by gathering her belongings. her actions steady and measured, as if moving through a ritual designed to reclaim her own space. Clothes went into suitcases, books and trinkets into boxes, each object a reminder of moments both joyful and bittersweet. The process was exhausting, but with every item packed, Anna felt a little lighter, as though each step took her further from the weight of betrayal. She decided to move in with her older sister for a while, seeking comfort in the familiarity of family. Her sister's apartment was smaller, a little cluttered, always humming with the sounds of children and everyday chaos. But it was a place that felt untouched by the pain of recent events. Anna welcomed the distraction, the gentle noise, the rhythm of other people's routines. She allowed herself to be taken care of for once, accepting home-cooked meals and late-night talks without feeling the pressure to perform or explain. There were nights when grief found her in the quiet spaces, when everyone else had gone to bed and the only sound was the ticking of a kitchen clock. But she discovered that sorrow was easier to bear with someone else nearby, even if no words were exchanged. During this time, Alexei tried again and again to reach her, flooding her phone with calls and messages. Sometimes he waited outside her sister's apartment, hoping for a chance encounter. But Anna refused to answer. She read his messages, sometimes more than once, tracing the familiar patterns of regret and pleading. But she felt nothing but exhaustion. The man who had once been her confidant, her closest ally, now seemed like a stranger. His attempts at explanation, his promises to change, rang hollow. Anna realized that she no longer needed his approval or forgiveness. She was learning to define herself by her own standards, to listen to the voice inside that insisted she deserved more than apologies and second chances. Marina's absence, on the other hand, was absolute. There were no calls, no letters, no chance meetings on the street. Anna wondered at times if this was Marina's way of respecting boundaries, or if shame and guilt had driven her to disappear entirely. She found herself missing the friendship even as she mourned its end, recalling moments when their laughter had echoed through the city streets, when secrets had been shared without fear. But the pain of betrayal had eclipsed even the fondest memories, leaving Anna with only questions that would never be answered. Over time, her longing for closure faded, replaced by an acceptance that not all wounds were meant to be healed by words. In her sister's home, Anna started to rebuild her life piece by piece. She returned to work, grateful for the distraction, for colleagues who treated her kindly without prying. She began to take long walks through the city in the evenings, letting the rhythm of her footsteps soothe her restless mind. The world looked different now, sharper, both more beautiful and more fragile. She noticed the way light fell across old buildings, the laughter of strangers spilling out from cafes, the fleeting comfort of a child's hand in hers as she helped her nephew cross the street. These small, ordinary moments became lifelines, reminders that life continued even after heartbreak. Gradually, Anna reconnected with friends she had neglected during her relationship. She accepted invitations to dinners and movies, allowed herself to laugh again, to share stories that were not weighed down by pain. There were awkward moments, times when conversation faltered or when well-meaning questions threatened to reopen old wounds. But Anna learned to navigate these with a grace she had never known she possessed. She spoke honestly about her experiences when she chose to, but she no longer felt the need to justify her decisions. She understood now that her value was not diminished by the choices of others, that she could claim her own narrative without shame. One afternoon, as spring pressed at the city's edges, Anna found herself sitting alone in a quiet park, watching the world awaken from winter's grip. The air was filled with the scent of new grass and the distant hum of traffic. She realized that, for the first time in months, she was not thinking about Alexei or Marina or the pain that had shadowed her every step. She was simply present, breathing in the moment, grateful for the space she had created in her own life. It was then that she understood the true meaning of freedom. Not the absence of suffering, but the ability to choose how to respond to it, to find beauty in the aftermath of loss. As Anna built her new routine, there were setbacks, days when the sadness pressed in around her, when memories surfaced without warning, when she questioned whether she would ever feel whole again. But these moments became less frequent, less overwhelming. As time went on, she discovered new passions, returning to old hobbies that had once brought her joy. She enrolled in a pottery class, losing herself in the careful shaping of clay, the quiet focus required to coax beauty from raw material. She volunteered at a local animal shelter, finding solace in the unconditional affection of dogs who asked for nothing but kindness. These activities grounded her, offering a sense of accomplishment that was entirely her own. Family became an anchor during this period. Anna found herself drawn closer to her sister, their relationship deepening in ways neither of them had expected. They shared late-night confessions, laughter over old movies, silent support during difficult days. Her niece and nephew brought unexpected bursts of happiness, their simple faith in the world reminding Anna that life was not always complicated. She allowed herself to be swept up in their games, to see the world through their eyes. And in doing so, she rediscovered a sense of wonder that had been lost in the turmoil of adult heartbreak. As the months passed, Alexei's messages grew less frequent, their tone shifting from desperate to resigned. Anna did not respond, but she sometimes read them in quiet moments, reflecting on the journey they had shared. She felt no urge to rekindle what had been lost, only a distant gratitude for the lessons learned. Marina remained absent, her silence both a source of pain and a space in which Anna could heal. Eventually, Anna realized she no longer waited for either of them to return, that her life had grown larger than the wounds they had left behind. Anna's journey was not linear. There were days when grief returned with unexpected force, when a familiar song or a passing stranger would trigger a wave of longing. But with each setback, she found it easier to recover, to remind herself of the progress she had made. She learned to forgive herself for moments of weakness, to celebrate small victories, to trust in her own resilience. In the end, it was not the absence of pain that marked her recovery, but the presence of hope, a quiet, persistent belief that she could build something new from the ashes of her old life. One evening, as she sat by her sister's window watching the sun set over the city, Anna allowed herself to dream about the future. She imagined a life filled with purpose and connection, with relationships rooted in honesty and mutual respect. She did not know what form this new life would take, or who might share it with her, but she was no longer afraid of uncertainty. She understood now that endings were also beginnings, that loss could make room for growth, that she was capable of surviving and even thriving after heartbreak. Anna closed her eyes, breathing in the cool evening air, and felt a sense of peace settle over her. She knew that there would still be hard days ahead, that healing was an ongoing process, but she no longer felt defined by her pain. She was, at last, the author of her own story, and she chose to write a future filled with hope, courage, and the quiet confidence that she could face whatever came next. Time moved forward in slow, deliberate steps, carrying Anna into a new season of her life before she realized she was ready. Spring turned to summer, the city warming and blooming around her, its streets once again alive with possibility. The memories of heartbreak and betrayal softened under the gentle pressure of ordinary days. Anna discovered that healing was not a single event but a slow accumulation of moments, some painful, some unexpectedly sweet, that together created the foundation for something new. She learned to let herself be surprised by joy, to welcome it without suspicion, and to trust that life still had more to offer. She found solace in routine and in the small pleasures that once might have gone unnoticed. Each morning, she walked to the corner bakery for fresh bread, greeting the staff by name and delighting in their easy smiles. She spent afternoons exploring neighborhoods she had never visited, taking photographs of old buildings and hidden gardens. Her curiosity slowly reawakening. The act of seeing her city through new eyes became a quiet rebellion against the darkness that had once threatened to overwhelm her. In these unhurried wanderings, Anna began to collect pieces of herself that she had lost. Her sense of adventure, her appreciation for solitude, her quiet determination. The boundaries of her world expanded as she allowed herself to reconnect with people beyond her immediate circle. She accepted invitations to gallery openings and book readings, hesitating at first, uncertain whether she was ready to belong anywhere again. She met new friends, some fleeting, some promising, and gradually built a small community that had nothing to do with her past life. The shared laughter and easy conversations were not replacements for what she had lost, but reminders that new connections were possible. That trust could be rebuilt one small gesture at a time. Anna realized that she could share parts of her story without surrendering to it. That her experiences made her neither fragile nor unapproachable, but simply human. Work became more than a distraction. It became a space for growth. Anna pursued projects that challenged her, volunteering for assignments that required creativity and collaboration. She discovered a quiet pride in her ability to lead, to contribute, to shape outcomes. Her confidence grew, not in grand leaps but in steady increments, each success reinforcing the idea that her value was intrinsic, independent of anyone else's choices. She sought out opportunities for learning, enrolling in evening courses, and finding satisfaction in the steady progress of new skills acquired. In these pursuits, Anna reclaimed her sense of agency, the belief that she could shape her own future. Family remained a constant source of comfort. Anna cherished evenings spent with her sister, the routine of shared meals and gentle teasing. Her niece and nephew became bright threads in the tapestry of her days, their laughter and questions a daily reminder of innocence and possibility. The rhythms of domestic life, once a backdrop to her own drama, now provided a sense of belonging and stability. She found herself more patient, more present, willing to pause and savor the ordinary moments that stitched one day to the next. In the quiet spaces she carved out for herself, Anna began to reflect on the journey she had traveled. She revisited the pain of betrayal not with bitterness, but with a sense of distance. As if the wounds belonged to someone she used to be. She acknowledged the lessons she had learned, the importance of boundaries, the necessity of self-respect, the healing power of forgiveness. She understood now that forgiveness was not a gift for others, but a way to free herself from the weight of old grievances. She forgave Alexei and Marina, not by excusing their actions, but by refusing to let their choices dictate her happiness. Most importantly, she forgave herself for not seeing what had been hidden, for holding on too long, for needing time to let go. As the months unfolded, Anna discovered a new capacity for gratitude. She was grateful for the pain, which had stripped away her illusions and forced her to grow. She was grateful for the love that remained, for the friends and family who had stood by her, for the resilience that had carried her through the darkest days. She was grateful for her own strength, for the ability to start over, for the courage to risk vulnerability again. One afternoon, while running errands in the city, Anna crossed paths with Marina. The encounter was unexpected, their eyes meeting across a crowded street. For a moment, time seemed to pause, the noise and movement of the city receding into the background. Anna felt no surge of anger or pain, only a quiet recognition of what had been and what could never be again. They exchanged small, tentative smiles, an acknowledgement, perhaps, of everything left unsaid. Marina turned away first, disappearing into the crowd, and Anna continued on her way, surprised by the lightness in her heart. That evening, Anna sat at her desk and wrote a letter to herself, a ritual she had started months ago, when words were the only way she could make sense of her feelings. She wrote about forgiveness, about hope, about the possibility of new beginnings. She promised herself that she would remain open to love, to friendship, to the unpredictable beauty of life. She wrote about the woman she had become, strong, compassionate, unafraid to be alone. The letter was not a farewell to the past, but a celebration of the present, an affirmation that she had survived and grown and would continue to do so. Anna's story was not one of neat resolutions or tidy endings. There were still days when grief returned, when memories resurfaced with unexpected sharpness. But she welcomed these moments as reminders of her own resilience, evidence that she had loved deeply and risked greatly. She understood now that healing was not the erasure of pain, but the willingness to carry it alongside joy, to accept both as part of a life fully lived. Each new day brought its own challenges and its own gifts, and Anna met them with openness and curiosity. With time, Anna began to imagine a future that excited her, a future not defined by fear or loss, but by the possibilities that remained. She dreamed of travel, of friendships yet to be formed, of work that inspired her and experiences that would stretch her understanding of herself and the world. She did not know what shape these dreams would take, or how they might change along the way, but she was content to move forward without certainty, trusting in her own ability to adapt. As summer deepened, Anna found herself standing on a rooftop at sunset. The city spread out before her in shades of gold and blue. The breeze was warm, carrying with it the sounds of laughter and distant music. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the pulse of life all around her. For the first time, she realized that she was exactly where she needed to be, not because her life was perfect or free from pain, but because she had learned to live with both sorrow and joy. She opened her eyes, looking out at the horizon, and felt a quiet sense of anticipation for all that was still to come.
Thanks for watching. It means a lot. Share the video, and I'll see you soon.